All right, hi everyone. This is Courtney from the National Weather Service in Seattle, and we just wanted to try something new today. We're going to be chatting with another one of our meteorologists, Jake, and two meteorologists from KOMO News today. So we just wanted to discuss a little bit about how we got to where we are in our careers, and then what a typical day looks like for us at the National Weather Service, and then Kristin and Shannon will share a little bit about what maybe a typical day looks like for them at the news station. So let me go ahead. I'll introduce Jake. If you want to go ahead and give a little spiel. Okay. As for, I guess I forgot to say my spiel, but I'm originally was born in California, but grew up in the Midwest in Indiana. So I went to Purdue for my undergrad and University of Wisconsin-Madison, the other UW, for my graduate degree. And then I moved to a few offices in Wisconsin and Indiana before I moved to Sacramento in California. So I worked in Northern California for a few years, and now I've been up here at the Seattle office for almost 2 years now. Started right around when Jake did. So that's how I got to where I am. We'll pass it off to Shannon.
Then I went back to the Bay Area and worked at KMTV there for 7-8 years as a morning meteorologist, and then came back here to Seattle. So kind of a West Coast girl, but with some Midwest roots.
How about you, Kristin?
All right, cool. Well, I just want to say thanks for inviting Shannon and I to jump on this call with both of you. And we consider ourselves partners in this crazy weather biz of ours, right? So it's great to chat with you and to chat with other folks. And my weather story was a little bit different from most. I grew up in a weather family. Both my parents are meteorologists. They both went to Penn State. Jacob, we are. So followed their footsteps, studied meteorology, graduated with a BS, and I too, Jacob, who went to Colorado for my first on-air gig, spent some time in the Midwest thereafter. Now I'm here in beautiful Washington State, and look at that, it's rain all the time. You guys are just there. Yes, you can see. I love it. Yeah, beautiful day. It's a nice office. Soaking in that sun.
Okay. So I guess we just wanted to kind of let everyone know what a typical day looks like in the weather service for Jake and I. So typically we work rotating shifts. So the weather service is open 24/7. So we work 3 rotating shifts during the day. So sometimes I'm on day shift, sometimes I'm on night shift, sometimes I'm working in the evenings. holidays, all of that, shutdowns. We're still working during COVID as well. And usually we get into the office, we get a briefing from the previous shift, and then we're working on the forecast. So that can be updated as frequently as needed, depending on what's going on. On a quiet day, we send out the forecast package at least twice a day. In addition to the forecast, we're also on social media. We're interacting with our emergency management partners as well as our media partners. So we do interact with Kristin and Shannon on a semi-frequent basis, depending on what the weather is doing. And then we're also working on projects and research as well. So we have a lot of things going on as well. Jake, what else do we do on a typical day?
Public shift desk, and then we have marine aviation. So our public shift kind of does the long range forecast. So they'll do anything from the 1 to 7 day period. So they'll kind of cover anything in that time frame. They'll do the sky cover, they'll do the probability of precipitation, the temperatures and whatnot. So they'll cover that aspect of the forecast. And then in the AFD, or area forecast discussion, they'll kind of write the short term and long term discussion. And then they'll issue any watches and advisories or warnings that we need to do. So they'll do that for the Cascades. We often see that during the winter, and then we'll also do that for lowlands if there's wind advisories and whatnot. So that's kind of the one desk. Then we have another desk that's really focused on the marine and aviation. So their focus really from the marine side is really on we cover about 100 nautical miles, I think, kind of out across the coast, and then the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and then across the Puget Sound area. So they'll issue small craft advisories. They'll really create the wind forecast and kind of, talk about, in the discussion, what the wind speeds are going to be, wind directions, and if there's any kind of systems that are moving through to kind of elevate those winds. And then they'll also focus on aviation. So we cover for about 7 or 8 airports, and we do forecasts really for the surface. We'll talk about the ceilings, so the bases of the clouds, like what are the cloud heights going to be, if there's any visibility issues with fog, as well as the wind direction and wind speeds, which can obviously impact, daily travel and daily routine from the aviation standpoint. So those are our 2 main desks, and then we do like a lot of social media work. We'll kind of have one person or a couple people, if it's really busy, kind of really on kind of social media, taking all the phone calls and whatnot, and along those lines. So if it's not too busy, we'll have a couple people there. But if it's really busy, like February of 2019, there was about 10 or 12 people out there. I was on the laptop. I think we ran out of laptops. Not really, but there's a lot of people out there. So it just depends how busy it is. But if it's active, there can be a lot of people on the operational floor.
Okay.
Right. And Jacob, I'll add to your point there when you talk about issuing watches and warnings. That's one way we work together, the National Weather Service and us here at KOMO News. We help disseminate all those watches, warnings, advisories out to the general public, so people are really prepared and aware of any weather hazard here in Western Washington. So kudos to you guys.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, and thank you, definitely.
How about you, Shannon or Kristin? What is I guess not every day in the weather is typical, but what is a normal day where there's not a lot going on look for you guys?
Well, Kristin, why don't you start it? So you start with the beginning of the day, and I'll meet you in the middle where we kind of trade the baton without even getting to see each other.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So we'll start off a typical day at KOMO News. I'm the morning shift, Shannon's the evening. So in the morning shift, I wake up at 2 a.m. That could be a scary time for some people, but I'm handling it. Okay, I get in here at the Weather Center, which I'm here right now at around 3 o'clock. This is our Weather Center. If I can show the camera. I get here at 3 a.m. I start to forecast. I look at all the weather data, look at all the forecast models, and I formulate a forecast in my head and eventually on paper. And then I put that into our weather graphic system. Here's the infamous green screen behind me. And we're ready to roll at 4:30 a.m. live at 4:30. So that's when people, I love the morning weather and the morning news because people are so weather hungry in the morning. They're getting ready for work. They're heading out the door quickly. It's like grab and go, quick. So you've got to get that information out quick, easy for them to digest. And it's great. And this is my view.
It's our big office there in the corner. Which has been nice during all of this, with the social distancing, because we're so far away from the rest of the newsroom. We're kind of lonely anyway over there, so it's worked out well in this case.
It really has. Yeah, we're fortunate that we have this nice weather center and the balcony, too. We can do some real-time weather observing out there, too.
Absolutely. So then I kind of take over. I roll in between 2 and 2:30. Usually totally incognito, as Kristin found out the first day I met her, because I tend to shower, and our part of the job, we have to get all this information out, but we're supposed to look really camera ready too, which, as you can see, this is my mom gear, and I don't start out that way. I have 2 uniforms, mom gear with a hat, and I haven't taken a shower, and then the TV look. But there's this in-between part where I roll in with totally wet hair and big sunglasses so nobody can see me. And that was how I met Kristin the first day. She kind of looked at me as I come in that office you saw saying, "Are you Shannon? And are you Kristin?" Because I try to hide before I get all ready. And then I usually go, dry my hair and all that good stuff. I like to do it there because, as you may see behind me, if I've got kids or dogs and everything, it's super distracting and busy here. So I like to do everything once I get there. And then, between 2:30, 2:45, I go start sitting down, going through all the models as you guys do at the Weather Service. I have I call it my method to the madness, where I sketch out my whole forecast on paper because I'm very visual and I like to see the 7 days progress with the thicknesses and what's going on in the upper atmosphere, what's going on in terms of wind and CAPE and precipitation. And so I have it all out in front of me so I can kind of visualize my story, I guess, in my head. And then, as you guys do too now at the Weather Service, we've really met in the middle with what we do, I think, in terms of graphics and social media. We start pounding out the graphics and making a visual presentation, which is akin to a PowerPoint, really, with what you see on TV, that will match what we're trying to disseminate and tell the public. So that's what we do. And then my first show's at 3:30 now. As you've seen over the years in news, it just keeps expanding, and we've got more and more of our product throughout the day because 20, 25 years ago, people used to tune in to the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock news, and that's where they got their information. And then obviously in the mid-90s, that all changed with the internet and with all of the cable offerings. And so local news has met that desire for constant information, both with social media and with a lot of shows. And so we start at 3:30, go until 7. Then there's kind of a big break. And then we have our typical late after primetime news at 11. So it's pretty late. Opposite of Kristin, she works very early. I work very late. I don't tend to go to bed until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, right when Kristin's getting up.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point for any students out there who are interested in becoming a meteorologist. Whether you're in the government or on TV or any of the other private sector companies, weather is really a 24/7 thing. And so you have to really learn, I think, to be flexible and be ready to work all those kind of weird hours. So if you're a person who likes routine, certainly that can be pretty challenging in what we do. So Jake had talked about, how we spin up operations when weather is really busy. How do you guys function differently when the weather is out of the norm?
You broke up a little bit there. Did you ask what we do in operations are when we go into like severe weather mode kind of thing?
Yeah, how does that differ from your normal day?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear that either. Okay, go ahead, Kristin.
Yeah, we typically like to have backup coverage. Obviously, if it's a severe weather day, if it's a crazy snowstorm kind of a day, normally there's either 1 or 2 people in the weather center working on graphics, crafting the forecast, keeping up to date on current conditions, just making sure we have extra hands on deck in situations like that.
Yeah, and then back to February. Let me get you back up. I was just sharing this on Facebook. Sorry. Back to February, we had a full house last year during that snow. That was a time where we did all get to see each other, and Steve Poole was there, and I don't know, was he not there? I guess he was still on leave, but Seth was there, and got to bunch of us all at once, kind of in-house working, good 12, 18-hour days. We had a hotel room nearby that we would take turns going to and sleep and come back and work. So yeah, during a severe weather situation, it's as many hands on deck as we can get, just like you guys at the Weather Service.
Well, I have not seen any questions from the audience. If you're in the audience and you have any questions, now is your chance to get them answered live, either by us or by Shannon or Kristin. If you just want to type them in your feed.
Here, I'll check my page too. I saw a couple of people reaching out and saying hello. Thank you, everybody. Let me get back to my page here. This is where I'm doing that. We set up with all the different screens so I can see everything at once instead of my tiny laptop.
Jake, anything you want to add while we're on?
Ooh, I have a question. How did everybody get interested in the field of meteorology? Everyone gets that question right off the bat, and I guess I can start it off. It's really hard to pinpoint one certain thing. When I grew up camping with my family in the Pennsylvania area. And it was one evening, really one night, we spent 12 hours in the restroom because there was tornadoes nearby, and a tornado touched down at a campground about 2 miles away. So I think ever since then, it kind of just spurred it. And, I'm here now, which obviously has less tornado activity, but I've done my fair share of research. But it's kind of how I started. I don't know how everybody else kind of got in. Courtney?
Well, I actually grew up, like I said, in Indiana, where we had a lot of severe weather and tornadoes. One actually touched down pretty close to my house when I was growing up, and I was terrified of severe weather. I used to make my little brother, I'd drag him into the hallway, and we'd sleep in the hallway where I couldn't hear the thunder or see the lightning. So once I got a little older, I started learning about, what caused thunderstorms or what made lightning. It wasn't so scary after all, and I thought I really liked science, and I thought would be a really cool job. So I went to college for it, and I internship with the National Weather Service during college, and I was like, this is pretty much my dream job. So I'm pretty fortunate, I feel like, to get to a lot of people have weather as a hobby. I get to do it for a job every day. How about you, Kristin?
Weather is such a unique field, too. I mean, there's a very small population number one, is a meteorologist that studies the weather for a living. So it is a very cool field in that regard. And like I said, I grew up in a family of meteorologists. Both my parents were broadcast meteorologists. My mom did the morning weather. My dad was the chief meteorologist, all at the same station, too. How scary is that? So I really grew up just, in a household where it was normal to talk about weather models and the forecast at the dinner table. So it was so cool. And Jacob, I know you were on the western part of Pennsylvania. I was on the eastern coast. I'm an Eagles fan. I don't know about you, Jacob. I guess
okay.
You're Pirates.
So you're a Flyers fan. That's the real question. Right?
Yeah. I like the Flyers. I do.
Okay.
But Seahawks too, right? We love the Seahawks.
Obviously, yeah.
I can't even talk to you if you're going to put down the Seahawks, that's for sure. I love the story that you have, Courtney, because I've heard that a few times. There are so many of us that loved weather as a kid, and I was one of those, and we're a dime a dozen that loved it, and we're into the thunderstorms. And like I said, in Wisconsin, we'd be at my grandparents' house, and all the cousins, we'd be watching, the lightning storm. When we'd all be there in the summer from our various coasts, we'd gather there in Wisconsin, and I'd be so into it, and everybody else would be scared. But I love how I've heard your story a few times where somebody was scared as a child, and it seemed to be the studying of it and kind of understanding how it all worked made it fascinating for you and took away the fear and brought more of the fascination on. And I think that story of falling in love with weather that way is really interesting and making it your profession. Ultimately, the thing that you were frightened of as a child, I think that's really interesting. And yeah, similar. I'd be interested to hear what all of your research was. Mine at the UW has always been with Bob Howes, who has recently retired. My recent field study was with the GPM satellite, just verifying the rainfall data from all around the world. And we had one right here in our own backyard in the Olympics, which was really fun to put on a couple of years ago. Jacob, what was your research involved?
So I did some research projects with the Center for Severe Weather Research. So Josh Warman, he takes his Doppler on wheels. So essentially it's a Doppler radar, but it's on the back of the truck.
Right. We worked with him with Olympics. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah, with the Olympic project. Yeah. So this was out in the plains, and we did two projects. One was studying thunderstorms at night. And so we pretty much drive around all night if there was thunderstorms and drive right through the thunderstorms and kind of collect data with that. And then the other one was dropping these pods, these instruments in front of tornadoes and getting out of there in time. So similar to Twister, more at the extreme.
Oh, that's amazing.
But similar to that. So that was kind of my meteorology research project, which are kind of fun to do out in the field, obviously.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, talk about exciting.
Yeah.
Here's a good question, and I think we'll end on that. Someone, it looks like John wants to know, what's the rarest weather event that we've all experienced in our lives? Anybody want to chime in?
Gosh, the rarest.
Or maybe just the most extreme, I suppose.
I got one.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
Thunder snow.
Oh, love it.
The weirdest thing.
I love that.
I grew up in the blizzard of 93, 96 in eastern Pennsylvania in the Pocono Mountains there. And I'll never forget, I was like 6 years old and seeing heavy snow. Usually it's heavy snow when you hear thunder during a snow event. But yeah, so that's pretty unique to see and hear.
I mentioned thunder snow on the air the other day, and of course Eric Johnson just went off teasing me, saying I was making stuff up again.
It's a thing. It's a rare thing, but it can happen.
Oh, I love it. How about you guys?
Oh, gosh, I guess I'll continue on. When we were doing the research projects, it's hard not to have extreme weather when you're placing pods in front of tornadoes. So there was one tornado. It was a Katy, Oklahoma Wynnewood tornado a few years back, and we placed it right in front of the tornado, but it was really close, and I was the driver. We had to get out there in time, and it got pretty intense. I won't get too graphic or give too many details, but when you're that close to a tornado or kind of researching data, it can kind of pretty intense. But I've never experienced thunder snow, but that was on my top of my list. So
awesome. What about you, Courtney?
Maybe thunder snow. I was in a blizzard. We had probably the only snow day at University of Madison in the history. We got about 18 inches and thunder snow, so that was really cool. I also worked in Sacramento the year we had the record wettest year in the Sierra Nevada, so I can't remember. I think upwards of like 900 inches of snow fell at some of the ski resorts. Yeah, and so that caused a lot of issues down once all that snow melt happened with all the levees, and I worked during the Obergfell Dam disaster when some of the spillway broke away. So I've seen a lot of cool things working from the Midwest to the West Coast, but nothing too crazy, luckily, yet, I guess, unless you count February of last year, which seemed like a never-ending snowstorm. So
it was. I'd say this isn't rare or wouldn't maybe fascinate most people, but I think my favorite type of weather to experience and forecast is actually the fog in the Bay Area. I think it is so beautiful and quiet, and it's such a powerful force when it comes in. And I lived pretty close to the beach, so to see that come in and kill a heat wave in 15 minutes, if you're there in San Francisco and you've got a marine push underway, and you're, say, up at Twin Peaks or one of those hills in San Francisco, and you see the fog and it's coming at you, and it just rolls over like this silent blanket, and it's thick and damp and drizzly and windy, and it will kill that heat wave so fast you'll go from 90 to 58 in 15 minutes. It's so powerful and crazy and amazing to be in that and experiencing it. So it's just this quiet force of weather. It's not like thunder snow. It's not a hurricane or a twister, but it is so powerful in its own right. And I just think it's fascinating.
I always think that fog is one of the hardest things to forecast too. Working in Sacramento, it was always like, is that going to come up from San Francisco? Or, especially around Washington too, I found it's like some days you put it in the forecast, it looks perfect, and then it just doesn't happen. So I always find that that's between that and snow here, that's one of the most challenging forecast aspects.
Yeah, it is very challenging, and you wouldn't think, it's fog. It's not wouldn't rank on anybody's exciting, top 5 weather, phenomena list, but I think it's just amazing. I love it. It's so powerful.
Yeah, freezing fog is a big deal here in the Sound. I mean, that's what causes a lot of accidents. And going back to like forecasting fog, it's almost like real-time forecasting. You always got to be mindful of those current conditions that can change just so quickly. I remember one morning, it was like in a 10-minute time span, visibility went from 10 miles down to almost 0 in downtown Seattle. And we were on the air, and it just happened so quick. It's just, you got to be up on those current conditions.
I think that one's also such an important message for all of us, both in the Weather Service and in our line of work, to convey to people, because I used to do a lot of legal forecasting too, and 90% of the cases would be having to do with freezing fog because they were slip and falls. And I always feel so bad for both sides involved, because the property owner or the business, when they don't see snow, they don't think ice. So I have to protect my customers or my clients and put out the de-icer. They know when they see snow, oh, I've got to do that. Don't forget with fog that it is the worst because it will give you the freezing fog if you go below freezing and then just slicking everything up with black ice. So I always feel sorry for both sides, both the businesses that didn't, put out protection, and also for the poor soul that gets out of their car and falls and slips and has a bunch of broken bones and they'll never be the same because nobody thinks of fog and thinks, oh, I'm going to slip. They see that with snow, but on both sides, nobody thinks of it. So I think that's one very important thing we always have to convey. If we think there's a chance of freezing fog, and I'll tell you what, Tacoma seems to be the hot spot for it, the cold spot for it, as the case may be. Let people know, even if there's a possibility, we use our mediums, our social media, our, KOMO for all of our ways of communicating, disseminating that information to tell people that's an issue so they can prepare.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up now.
Anything else? I don't see the questions here.
There are a few, but we'll try to answer them there on Facebook for everybody we didn't get to. We just wanted to thank both Shannon and Kristin for joining Jake and I today. It's been fun, and we hope everybody got a little entertainment while they're working from home or staying home during all of this. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you again too. Yeah. Okay. I'd love to. Bye, guys. Have a great day.